Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would just introduce Colonel Vijay Chenji Sri Vijay Khan to all of you. He is the president of Indus International Research Foundation, which was formed in the year this year in the January, and we have just started conducting webinars, and we had already had some series of webinars regarding Afghanistan and various other subjects. So this is a series of the webinar we have planned, and I would now hand over to Colonel Vijay for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and namaskar. Greetings to you all. Good morning, good evening, whichever part of the world you are from. And then, first of all, I welcome you all to this webinar. Before that, I would like to say a few words before I start about the Indus International Research Foundation for the benefit of those who are watching for the first time. The world today is passing through great changes in its political and economic order. We are witness to some dramatic and upheavals and fundamental changes in alignment of global forces. This is causing sharp polarization of ideologies and giving birth to many conflicting worldviews. Amidst the chaos, political thinkers, statesmen, policymakers, research institution intellectuals, and study groups are putting their heads together to find viable solutions to resolve this conflict and to create better world for tomorrow. We at the Indus International Research Foundations are contributing our bit uh, in the same process. Our leadership comprised of very motivated and dedicated people with vast experience in professional and public life. They are committed to bring in and facilitate fresh ideas from corporate, civil services, academia, and the defense, and so many other fields. Our priority is to publish research papers and articles, initiate discourses, spread ideas on various issues, especially emanating from those who have first-hand practical experience and knowledge of the subject that can equip India and the world with skills to navigate the 21st century with wisdom to create a bright future for humanity. Our vision is if mankind is to survive as a civil society, there is no alternative but to share the resources of the universe for the benefit of all. We feel that the Indian civilization, philosophy, and traditions have much to offer to the world to resolve above contradictions. As a global think tank of professionals from varied fields who have come together to promote scientific temper in generating new and innovative ideas using the traditional Indian wisdom to analyze global trends in the areas of international affairs, economics, trade, environment, security, history, art, culture, and so many other plethora of issues to seek and share global solutions. Our foundation also endeavors to prepare India in facing the challenges of the 21st century as an economic and knowledge power to contribute its bit to the common good of humanity. And as we believe in the famous Indian wisdom that in what is given in the Isha Upanishad, Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat Tene Trakta Ma Gridaha Kashashchit it basically tells that the world order, the whole universe is created by God and there's enough for everybody. There's no need to covet somebody else's. This is briefly what the thing is. Now I'll come to the today's the topic. It's a welcome to you all to this webinar on information and communication technology. Though it's not exactly a new subject, it's nevertheless not very commonly used topic. Most of us have a fuzzy and a hazy kind of information about it. So, what exactly are its applications? How does it impact national security? How does ICT influence national economic development? Where does India stand on this issue? Now, is there a strategic ICT plan? These are some of the questions that come to my mind. I'm sure many in the audience would have similar doubts too. To answer these and many other questions, we have with us a galaxy of very eminent and distinguished experts who will present their views. Their detailed introduction will be done later by Brigadier Sandeep. We have with us Lieutenant General Hooda, one of the most highly decorated veterans we have. Former Army Commander, Northern Command. He's a well-known household name because of all his, exploits, and very popular among the public, a thinker and a military strategist. We also have with us Ambassador Smita Purushottam, with her excellent understanding of international diplomacy. She is also, from what I could gather, from her profile, a very versatile personality with diverse interest in from technology, management, industry, economy, and that's really sort of something we are looking forward to her views. We also have Mr. Shambhu Singh, IS. He too has varied experience in fields as diverse as education, environment, public service, interest, and especially counterterrorism. He comes from Northeast, where I have served for very long periods, Mizoram, Nagaland, Manipur, and all, and I can understand, the importance of those. Finally, we have Pavithran Rajan, who will moderate the panel discussion. He is a pioneer in this field, and with his military background, will bring to table all aspects of ICT. We look forward to a very stimulating and intellectually rewarding discussion on this very important subject. And I also invite Mr. Kundana, an expert in artificial intelligence. I don't know if he's joined. He said he'll join, and if time permits, if he comes, in the end, I'll request Pavitran to spare 5 minutes for him to give a little overview on artificial intelligence, because we later on plan to do a series of all this cognitive warfare or hybrid warfare, and it will be in the form of question answers, today's format. I now request Brigadier Sandeep Kumar to formally introduce all our guests and commence the proceedings. The approximate duration of the webinar is about 90 minutes. It all depends at the end, the questions. We are looking forward to this. Thank you very much. Once again, welcome to you all. Namaskar.
Good evening, everybody. We have three distinguished guests with us and a distinguished moderator. Firstly, I'll take on Lieutenant General D.S. Hooda. Lieutenant General Devendra Singh Hooda is the former General Officer Commanding-in-Chief of Indian Army's Northern Command. The General Officer was Northern Army Commander during the surgical strike in September 2016. He is most prominently known for his views on Kashmir, with a strong emphasis on human rights. With a career spanning 40 years, he has served at both northern and eastern borders of India. An alumnus of National Defence Academy, he was commissioned in the 4th Battalion of the 4 GR Gurkha Rifles on 15 December 76, which he later commanded. He has been an instructor at Military College of Telecommunication Engineering, MAU, and a Colonel GS of a Strike Corps. He has also had tenures in the Military Operations Directorate and Quartermaster General's branch in Army Headquarters. He has also served on United Nations mission in Ethiopia and Eritrea, for which he was awarded UNMEE medal. He retired on 30th November 2016, and nearly 40 years of service in the Indian Army. He is a prolific writer and speaker on strategy and military affairs. We also have Madam Smita Purushottam, IFS. Ms. Smita Purushottam served as an ambassador in Venezuela, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Holy See. During a tenure as ambassador in Switzerland, concrete progress was achieved on black money and Swiss support for India's NSG candidature, with China opposed. She also served as India's missions abroad in Berlin, London, Brussels, Moscow. Her most formative experience was in China, and she had opportunity to study the Chinese economic reforms firsthand, which she relayed back to India. She served as Joint Secretary in various branches in the Ministry of Defense and in SARC, and in Undersecretary in Bhutan in MEA. She spent a year as fellow in Harvard during 2000-2001, where she prepared a paper, Can India Overtake China?, in which she compared the two economies and their respective reform experiences. She emphasized the importance of embedded technology, now called IoT. Her recommendations focusing on a strong high-tech manufacturing base was partially implemented later. She also attended courses at National Defense University, Washington, University of California and San Diego, and International Institute of Management Development, Lausanne. She joined the Institute of Defense IDSA, New Delhi in 2010 as a senior fellow, where she launched the High-Tech Defense Innovation Forum to promote high-tech indigenous science industry. She is a founder of non-profit Do Tank, Sitara, a science indigenous technology and advanced research accelerator to bring increased vigor to the indigenization of high-tech production and building a science nation in India. It is due to Sitara's pioneering work on the threat posed by foreign equipment in ICT networks that several reforms have been implemented in telecom security procurement system. And Philip has been provided to domestic high-tech production. She has also published a number of articles in reputed journals and newspapers in India and abroad. Now we have Mr. Shambhu Singh IAS. Mr. Shambhu Singh is a mission-oriented person with incisive analytical skills and tremendous experience in counter-terrorism, rehabilitation, and social development fields. He has single-handedly steered one of the most enduring insurgencies/terrorism movement to an acceptable threshold, thus facilitating its near resolution. He has had work experience in development of small-scale sector in India, climate change, negotiations in UNFCCC, education, forest and environment, and infrastructure sectors, particularly highways, shipping, and power. One of the early birds in adopting ICT in the government, he has been passionate about India's domestic ICT sector development. He is superannuated as Special Secretary and Financial Advisor to the Ministry of Road and Transport and Highways and Ministry of Shipping. And we have the moderator, Pavithran Rajan, who is an alumnus of National Defense Academy. And Pavithran Rajan is an adjunct faculty at the Cyber Security Research Center, Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh, and on the board of advisors of Cyber Peace Foundation. He is considered a thought leader in information warfare and strategic thinker of the information age in India. As already mentioned, Pavithran Rajan is a prolific writer and he has authored a very important book recently, which he will be discussing today. With this, I'll hand over to Pavi to take the webinar further.
Thank you so much, sir. Such an extensive introduction. So I think I will summarize it in all that among the three eminent speakers, I worked with all of them very closely and I know all of them, quite well over the last quite a few years. Arguably, these are some of the best brains in India today who can address the subject. So I'm privileged to moderate this whole group for you. So without much further delay, let me just jump in to the topic of the day, gray zone warfare. When you look at warfare, you think it's a military domain, but then in many warfare, in new age warfare, that everything might not be the military domain. So let me give it a first shot to Mr. Shambhu Singh, because he has served a long time in the Ministry of Home Affairs, and he would know quite a bit on gray zone warfare. So let me take his first view, sir. How do you define gray zone warfare, and why is it performed the preferred form of warfare in the information age? So we in this particular webinar, unlike others where people get to do presentations, we get to a conclusion by asking questions of the speakers, and we will tackle it in a debate format. So over to you, Mr. Shambhu, sir. Can you please give me your introduction of gray zone warfare? Because when I did my research on the field, I found that the definition was expansive and elusive. So over to you, sir, if you could do justice to this.
Thank you, Pavi. As you rightly said, the definition is elusive. Gray zone warfare, as far as I have understood, stands somewhere or anywhere between an economic competition ranging to a threshold which is just below a kinetic conflict. and involves the whole gamut of society and societal issues. Say you start from the economic opportunity or the lack of it, justice in the society, human rights in the society, rule of law in the society, good governance in the society. And remember, human rights would also here, I'm trying to present human rights in the form of availability of shelter, availability of food, availability of basic health care, availability of basic education, opportunities. So it is something wherever there is a weakness which can be exploited by an adversary, that would fall in the category of gray zone warfare. For instance, dissatisfaction somewhere, dissembling kind of attitude, approach somewhere, funded and encouraged by an adversary, would be a gray zone warfare. It is just below the threshold of a complete war, complete battle. Funding insurgency, encouraging insurgency, and other instances we have in India encouraging left-wing extremism, Naxalism for that matter, or recently what we have been seeing indirectly funding this so-called Kisan Andolan, which was not a Kisan Andolan, or whatever it was. It's debatable. But these are the things which can be roughly called the gray zone warfare, to which most of the liberal democracies of today have been either a victim or have been actors in them. And particularly the country across that huge pond, the great US of A, has been excelling in it for the last so many years. Not that others haven't, but the most recent example which comes to my mind has been the USA. Now, you talked of information age, where the boundaries, geographical boundaries have been obliterated. It is basically the technological tool or the toolkit that can be employed to accentuate and accelerate this gray zone warfare and the impact that can happen on the society. These have become the most dangerous issues which we are likely to face in the coming days, and which we are already to some extent facing. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. That you captured a whole lot of gamut of gray zone warfare. But I have, in my last few years, whenever things have become elusive, I have gone back to one gentleman, okay, who brings absolute clarity to matters, okay, because he is so thorough and so professional in his field. So over to General Hooda, sir. May I ask you for your particular views on it? Can you summarize it and maybe try and give us a more, make it less elusive? Let me put it that way, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Pavithran. It's a great pleasure to be here among this panel. Great people that you've selected, and you yourself who are running this. So broadly what Mr. Shambhu Singh has said is, in detail covered what exactly is gray zone warfare. I just want to make, one or two sort of additional points. One is sometimes this term hybrid warfare and gray zone warfare is used interchangeably, but it has different components. So I think the first one thing that we should understand is gray zone warfare to some extent differs from hybrid warfare. And as Mr. Shambhu's pointed out, coercive actions that remain below the threshold of armed conflict. So anything that you do, attempting to continue your hostile actions against another state power, but ensuring that you do not transgress into the armed conflict or conventional warfare domain. So he's pointed out psychological warfare, a political subversion of what was attempted, for example, in the U.S. election, triggering discontent among societies, cyber attacks, proxy war. I mean, what are we facing against Pakistan? We have been saying that they are, carrying on a proxy war against us. And to some extent, they have been successful because despite our conventional military superiority, they have remained at that threshold where we are not considering use of military power, while continuing to say that Pakistan is carrying out proxy war. And again, as Mr. Shambhu pointed out, these are not new things. I think what has changed is the dominance of information technology that has increased the impact of these actions. And so you have even weaker powers continuously using gray zone warfare against a superior foe. A classic case is North Korea. Now, North Korea is a country that cannot even feed its population, and it is carrying out cyber attacks against United States. Similarly with Iran. And these are cyber attacks. So you would recall the very famous, 2014, I think, the Sony hack, which forced Sony to pull out its movie, The Interview, from cinema halls, etc. And President Obama said, this is an attack on our way of life. This is an attack on freedom of speech. This is an attack on principles of the country. So I think we need to now start looking at in detail at information warfare, how technology impacts, and how we are going to deter the gray zone warfare. While there is a good understanding today of what gray zone warfare involves, I think not enough debate has taken place on how do you deter this. And today in our discussion, you will bring in the ICT component, and that has an important role to play when you look at deterring gray zone warfare from hostile actors, non-state actors, for example. So I'll leave it here about.
Thank you, sir. Now it does look much less elusive. You have come to the crux of it. And gray zone was always there, although the Americans were, as usual, the pioneers in injecting that particular term. And the significance of ICT in the information age. That is what has changed it. May I now go to Ms. Smita Purushottam, a very cerebral diplomat, and for her views on this particular topic.
Thank you very much, Pavi. And I'm very, very honored to be part of this panel, because more than expertise, I think what I really appreciate about all of you is your love for your country and your patriotism and your dedication. And as you said, I've worked with both Sri Shambhu Singh and yourself, and I've really looked up to General Hooda. I was very excited when I first came across his article a few years ago, and I immediately looked for him and his email, and one of our members kindly shared it with me. And again, we all share that passion for our country. And I think the feeling that, it hasn't been done justice to, and I'll explain why I say that. So General Hooda mentioned one very important thing, which is, the centrality of ICTs in gray zone warfare and what we have to do for it. Because our work in Sitara, the Science, Indigenous Technology and Advanced Research Accelerator, has focused on this issue only. And the fact is that the threat really comes from many, many corners of the world. But we have been focusing initially on the threat coming from China. And basically, we found that a lot of our tenders, a lot of the information networks that we have been penetrated by them, mainly because of internal collusion. So I don't know if I have to say everything right now, or maybe I can just stop here and then, respond more to the questions and answers later. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, ma'am. You have come to the crux of the matter. Interference, even in purchases, government purchases. Does it qualify as gray zone warfare? While we go ahead with our questions, we'll slowly come down to maybe answers which we can, distill, and maybe Indus can take it up with the relevant authorities so that we understand that this is an assault on the integrity of this nation. So I now jump into my next question. Okay, what role does information play in gray zone warfare? What has changed? because when you look at it, things from an academic point of view, the change is what is needed. We all know that gray zone warfare has existed since the advent of man. You can even see it in animal kingdom. Posturing, posturing before an actual assault can be gray zone warfare. But what role does information play in gray zone warfare? So let me ask thorough professional General Hooda to maybe give us insights into this. Please, sir, over to you.
So, Pavithran, let me start the answer to your question by one small story. So, in 1993, the Americans launched. They were in Somalia and they launched an operation. And a lot of you would have seen that movie Black Hawk Down. So the operation was to capture there was a warlord Adid. They were to capture two of his lieutenants. It was a special forces operation, quickly to go in. Helicopters would go and special forces would rappel down, capture these guys. A convoy of Humvees would come in. They would take these and go back. So the operation was supposed to last for 2 hours. Unfortunately, the operation went wrong. 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down. There was a whole night of battle. At the end of that, 19 American Special Forces soldiers were dead. And there are estimates that they killed anything between 700 to 1,000 or 2,000 Somalis. So you could say that this was a tactical success. Unfortunately, what happened was that 2 of the soldiers were captured by the Somalis, and next morning there were pictures of these people, mutilated bodies being dragged through the road, and these images flashed on American TV the next day. There was such an outcry that within 4 days President Clinton said the US is withdrawing from Somalia. The reason I'm giving this example is how information can actually play on the minds of political leaders. And I'm talking 30 years ago. Today, the manner in which information is being transmitted at such lightning speed, it's having more and more impact on minds of commanders. We very often say that battles are won or lost in the minds of commanders. So while, as the others have pointed out, these are issues which are causing divisiveness in society, coercive influence on people and population, I think we must also look at how information is playing on political leaders, how information is influencing their decisions. And so the role of information coupled with what is technology today, I think is far, far more than what it was in the past. And that is something that we need to look out for. Pavithran.
Thank you, sir. Information. When you think about information as a center of power, one thing which struck me when I wrote one particular piece was, Mao is famously said that power flows from the barrel of the gun. These days, power flows from the screen of your smartphone. So someone who has dealt with this firsthand, Shambhu's, ask Mr. Shambhu Singh. So having been in the Ministry of Home Affairs, a lot of work which happens out there, are not publicly known to people. Okay, but a lot of work does happen there, wherein a political call, the control of politics, the stability of the nation, to ensure that where is the nation's focus. So can you just give us a little bit of insight into how information plays a role in gray zone warfare and your own experiences while in the Ministry of Home Affairs, wherein you had to play a role in ensuring that information is moderated so that political temperatures cool down? Over to you, sir.
That's a tough one to answer. But what I have seen while working there is that most of the information which comes to us, half of them we filter them out for the purposes of operations, and half of them we take to the political leadership for optics. In general, I have found that the political leadership gets extremely agitated when an information onslaught takes place. Immediately, they are not able to analyze as to what is its meaning, where is it coming from, what might be its repercussions. They simply feel threatened. They simply feel that there is going to be mayhem in the country. Now, those are the situations where the role of the people who look at the information, analyze the information, comes into play. Anyway, be that as it may, let's leave it aside. Because as I said, it's very, very tricky to answer. What will disturb the political leadership? You might feel it will disturb, it might not. And you might feel it might not, it just might. So again, it's gray zone. Even within the information onslaught, information warfare, there is a huge gray zone which is existing. You have to take into account the mindset of a huge number of people, 120 crores, 130 crores, the number of adults amongst them, the way one group of people thinks, the way the other group of people thinks. It's a highly, highly complex exercise. It would be very difficult to deal with. One thing which comes to my mind, and Pavi, you were instrumental in it, you were involved in it. While working in MHA, we had found that a lot of Northeastern people had started migrating back to Northeast, particularly to Assam after Kokrajhar riots had taken place. You found out initially what was happening. Somebody had morphed photos and put it on the blog site, and it was circulating amongst the people. They had started attacking people from the Northeast, especially so from the Assam. And trainloads of people were coming back when railways were advised to not to ask for the tickets, let them come back. After you had pointed it out, we literally took up a counter operation. And that counter operation, after 3 days, led to return of the same people who had come back to their homes. Now we countered it luckily because we knew about it. I really shudder to think if we had not known about it, what would have happened? People from other states of the country living in the Northeast would have been butchered. People from the Northeast living in other parts of the country were already under attack and probably might have been butchered. This is the importance, and this is the result of the information flowing freely over social media, over the net, and to which people have access to. Now imagine, today we have 540 million people, of which 450 million have got access to smartphones. And they are on the net, they are accessing the net day in and day out. If something similar happens and some fake news is spread, and as we know, most of the WhatsApp and other news are fake, and there are no means to check them, it will create havoc in the country. We had realized it at that point of time, and we had decided that we should take it to a point where the nation is able to monitor and is able to counter. Unfortunately, we did not succeed in doing that. Why we did not succeed, I expect Ambassador Smita to explain later, because she is involved in it day in and day out. And it has been my regret. But I feel that this whole gray zone conflict, which we have been trying to define, I would like to compare it with an orchestra, a full contingent orchestra, wherein an unseen power is able to make the orchestra play all the instruments in one go, or some instruments at one point of time, or the certain instruments in such a manner that only cacophony is heard. We are at that juncture. In this society, we do not have the means to counter that. We have no central structure which would be able to anticipate and act in advance to counter such things. This has been my experience, and particularly while dealing with the terrorist organizations, dealing with the insurgent organizations, we have found that many a time our purposes have been defeated by totally fake news being spread. I don't think I can go any further on this subject.
Thank you, sir. That was quite a expose. Although you've been very kind to give all the credit to me, but I think a lot of people do not understand that you were quick to grasp. We were people who could give the decision makers inputs, but it was totally on the decision maker and how they acted. And that Northeast, when it happened in 2012, you did a wonderful job. I remember you and the Home Secretary at that time. You both did a wonderful job to ensure it was a textbook case of how to diffuse a social cohesion issue. But then
please remember, Pavi,
Sir.
I'm sorry for interjecting. Please remember, he had not gone to political leadership for doing that.
Yeah, great. So let me, maybe I leave it to you, sir, if you want to name the gentleman. Today is a politician, so he will understand what it is. He's at least a political, he's a minister of, of the state. So that, anyway, let me summarize it in this way. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. For the political leadership, political and social stability is central, which might not be so discernible to the government servant or the academic. It is the political class which is most sensitive to public opinion. And there is good reason for that. Because the history of humankind has always been of creating and holding on to a narrative to stay in power. And that is what information is all about. So in gray zone warfare, anyone who manages to, set the narrative wins, hands down. So let me, take us on to a slightly, ma'am, Miss Smita, what about the role of information and the narrative in diplomacy? Out here, it translates into riots, it translates into change votes, political issues, but in more rarefied, field of diplomacy, when you're sitting abroad, how have you seen information play a role in gray zone warfare? Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'd warned you that I can't really speak on this subject, but I would prefer if you asked me a question on the areas in which I've been working, because very frankly, our foreign policy has very little technological depth, and whether I have ever encountered the misuse of social media manipulation in foreign policy, I would not be able to answer. I'll be frank.
Actually, I was talking about the effect on diplomacy, but that's okay, ma'am. Whenever I look at you, ma'am, you're a role model, and I keep wondering about why we in India, worship Durga. Okay, you stay right from the heart. Okay, you put it over there, and you ask questions to the nation, which people find it so difficult to, handle. The right questions, let me tell you, the right questions. Okay, and we look up to you. But it's good, ma'am, that you have said that ICT is not a domain which the MAA has played too much of attention to, although I'm told they've appointed a joint secretary over there, but that we are still a work in progress as a nation in terms of creating and holding on to a narrative. I know.
MEA,
Yeah, ma'am.
sorry, MEA believes in analyzing things, in a very granular fashion, the nitty-gritty, who said what, who did what. I don't think that they're into broad trends, which really ultimately is what explains what's going on in our world.
Yes. What is the defining narrative that India is all about? Are we still nation of peasants, a feudalistic society? If we are, the majority of us are, feudalistic in outlook, can we, how does this nation handle gray zone warfare when the leaders themselves, or even the academics and the civil servants who are from the population, do not understand the intricacies of warfare? That's something which we'll come back to. But now let me come back to a very technological question, okay, which has got to do with gray zone. How has technology, particularly in ICT, transformed how information is understood, transmitted, and consumed? What has changed? I shall direct this question to General Hooda. So, when you were the Northern Army commander, you were one of the people who first foremost understood the centrality of indigenization of the entire ICT infrastructure. Like me, you are an infantryman, but why did you understand this, and why didn't people who are engineers not understand the centrality of this? Let me have your insights into this, sir.
So Pavithran, it's yeah. So Pavithran, it's not so much about being technology savvy or understanding technology, but as you are saying, understanding what the impact of that technology would be on national security, how it could actually impact our own networks. Today, technology, you're talking about everything is linked. There are network systems, and therefore anything that affects one network is going to have its impact on the other systems. Also, information in its basic form, as we know, is data, and our ability to store, transmit, access, manipulate data has increased enormously. And so understanding that as where, so we thought of replacing our foreign software, at least on our military computers, where we were using all Microsoft and Windows, and for every other application, it was a foreign software. And we said this is going to become dangerous in times of operations. And I understood it only as one simple thing. Tomorrow, if there is some virus introduced by whoever into your networks, for example, into your Windows system, who's going to come and fix it? And if it has to be, you are relying on some foreign company to come and fix it for you, and in times of crisis they don't, you are really, really up a gum tree. And so therefore we said, let's introduce an indigenous operating system, which was called BOSS. Now, I know there are always teething difficulties with all this, and there were teething problems, but BOSS was more than willing to, pitch in. They put their engineers there. I think some of it was also, I would say, as I said, our own understanding of what the impact of this is. So I do recall officers at some level saying, we can't make good PowerPoint presentations, and therefore we would like to switch back to Windows because our PowerPoint presentation is not good. So, I mean, as I said, a basic understanding of how these things are. And unfortunately, we didn't get enough support even at the higher Army headquarters level. As long as I was there, we managed to, sort of push it down everybody. Mr. Shambhu, is aware. He also helped out in keeping that thing afloat. Unfortunately, I think a year after I left, it was back to Windows. So I'm just giving this as an example. When you're asking why people are not understanding, it's not that they don't. It's not about technology. I think it's about understanding what are the national security implications to what you are doing, and that lack of understanding somehow is there, or was there. I don't say it is there now. Was there at that time, and we found a lot of resistance. So with seminars like this that you're doing, I think if there is greater understanding of how this could impact on our national security, on our security architecture, if that understanding grows, I think automatically this whole issue, which Ambassador Smita has been so passionate about, and she's almost a crusader in this, that we need to replace foreign hardware, software with indigenous components. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more as we go. That understanding will, I think, grow. But you could ask, Ambassador Smita and Mr. Shambhu as to why we are not able to sort of get a grip on this. I mean, I find it completely astounding as to why you're not able to get a grip on this thing. So I'll leave it at that also.
So, sir, the human beings, we all are apes in some way, and we tend to ape. So, it's a masterclass in, information warfare or setting the narrative, as the Americans have achieved, and which our private sector, led by NASSCOM, wherein there are a lot of people who are still very passionate about, oh, we trust Microsoft because I work in there, I get my salary from there, and they got the money to fund the narrative. A lot of our think tanks, like I initially mentioned, got their funding from those companies which had so much of money to spare to ensure. Even today, there are many universities where we teach people from our engineering colleges on proprietary software. Can you think of a better, success as far as information warfare is concerned, wherein someone else believes what you are propagating for your, national benefit or your corporate benefit is for the good of everyone? That is the acme, I think, of success. But then let me go back to Ms. Smita. Ma'am, what has actually changed in the information age? In the olden days, the oracle used to come and speak, and the king, or it used to get spread from the oracle, from the words of the oracle and gods. The directions used to go to the people. But in the information, age, what has happened is there are those sensors who also take the inputs back from the people to the oracle. Okay, those sensors are always listening in onto you, and when you see and when you listen, emotions can be sensed. What feeds you, what animates you, what is attractive can be sensed. So this is in one way what is how technology has changed in the information age. But does that sort of thing, let me put it, impact? Okay, because you have come from a field of diplomacy and economic growth from that particular field. Now you are coming to a national security field. It's not only the economics of it, but it's also the national security, the very foundation of the state on which ICT rests. So, ma'am, like General Hooda correctly pointed out, you've been at the forefront. And today, if things have changed from General Hooda trying to put indigenous things, today it's Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbhar is the flavor of India. So could you just explain to us, I know you would say that there are certain topics which you might not be, but at least, ma'am, as a person who's had a central role in this, make us understand why are others not able to visualize or see what you are articulating? Because it looks like open and shut to me, but why is it not happening? Maybe can we have your insights?
I think we are all agreed on this issue, and I really appreciate what General Hooda said, that he doesn't understand why people don't get it, and also what Shambhu Singh said, and that is the psychological warfare aspect of it. And if you don't mind, I'll just bring in my perspective to put these things together. So I got involved with this issue a few years ago when some ICT telecom companies came to me and told me that they were being driven out of their own country's market because of enormous corruption and tendering practices. And then when I looked deeper into it, and of course I read your work and I read General Hooda's work, and also because of my background in China, I was interested in what they were doing. I was especially interested, I'd already been studying their ICT strategy. Their ICT strategy is basically focused on the fact that they consider it a weapon. They have weaponized their ICT strategy, and psychological warfare is very much a part of their information warfare strategy. Now, you have a country which is so tremendously focused on improving its technological capabilities, which has invested billions, if not trillions of dollars in this particular this sector, which, if I may quickly add, is the foundation of foundations today. If technology is the foundation of national power, ICTs are the foundation of technology. And what we are doing really with this corruption and this completely skewed system that we have, we are depriving our country of this boost that, that investment in ICTs and encouragement of this industry in our country would have given to our economy. So we are losing out both on national security because the Chinese were able to manipulate, sentiment in India through the various Chinese apps, through the control of ICT networks. People are throwing figures like 80% of India's ICT networks are in Chinese hands. So with these kind of security threats, both at the national security and economic security levels staring at us, we went on a war footing to the government and said that you have to do something about it. And let me tell you, it wasn't the line ministries which responded. The only ministry, the only department which responded to us was the National Security Council Secretariat. And they took it very seriously and they were horrified. In fact, they told us we are shocked when we told them the entire litany of measures that the departments had leveled against their own domestic industry. They were completely shocked and they sent instructions around government to do something about it. Well, there's been incremental progress, and you always encourage me because I keep saying, as General Hooda also said, why government, why people don't get it? But you have pointed out there have been victories. We also have tabulating our victories, and there are small signs of hope. The BSNL tender was rescinded. Then the issue of, at least in principle, they've agreed, on procuring indigenous stuff for LOCs. ME has agreed to that. And there are several other areas in which we have made a lot of progress, but somehow they all remain at the level of policy. In terms of implementation, we haven't seen that much progress. On the other hand, some of our member companies are reporting to me that since we started this campaign, the trend of decline in revenues has reversed. More orders are filtering through, not flooding through, but filtering through. But we every day, and it's exhausting, somebody comes to me with an instance of corruption. One after the other, foreign companies, of course, Chinese companies, that's a huge victory for us, by the way, that Chinese companies at least have been, marginalized. In Russia, there's a wonderful word called Astranids. They've been basically put to the side. And we are quite happy about that, but that's not the end of the battle. So I hope I haven't taken up too much time, but in essence, that's the work that Sitara has been doing with all your help and all your contacts.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. But let me go to Mr. Shambhu Singh. Mr. Shambhu Singh is a man whom I've got immense respect and regard for, but he belongs to a professional tribe called the IAS. So since my professional journey in the government and later on has come about, I've always heard this restraint. Oh, the IAS are the most brainy of the Indians. So, and Indians, historically, when you think about the Indic narrative, that we consider we are the Vishwa Gurus. We are the people who have given a lot of wisdom to the world, except in the last 200, 300 years, where we, with all that wisdom, we did get, subjugated and colonized. But when the Chinese could understand that ICT has immense warfare potential, why do you think, sir, couldn't our IAS grasp it? And why were our policies not attuned to protecting India's national interests? Could you please give us an overview of your insight into that particular field, sir?
One thing right in the beginning, let me make it clear that national security and economic growth cannot be seen in isolation. None of them is divorced from each other. We can look at economic growth as well as national security. So starting with that premise, I do maintain that if we do not depend on foreign companies, if we do not entirely depend on foreign technology, if we are not going on scouting for technology elsewhere, we can still have the best of the world, rather better than what is available. Except for certain areas like microchips, which we are not dealing with right now. And attain better economic growth through our domestic production, through our domestic consumption, and also what I have felt while interacting with some foreign people, that our technologies will be much more welcome in their countries than the technologies being offered by Europe or China or America or what have you. Now, having said that, let me come back to my tribe or the caste, whatever you call it. Let us remember fact number one. In the IAS, people generally try to confine to the area which has been assigned to them. They do tend to remain within the limits or within a silo of, say, rural development or of, say, urban development or petroleum or health or whatever, wherever they are. There is no incentive to learn something new, particularly a thing like ICT, which is the latest, the newest kid on the block. It holds no attraction to them because even if they learn, there is no guarantee that they will be posted or deputed to a place where they can use their knowledge. It is true that not many people who are already trained ICT personnel, engineers, are being recruited into the service. But unfortunately, the system works in such a manner that the very same people are not utilized in the areas which they have specialized in. Now, I don't specialize in ICT. I am not an engineer. I am like you, a graduate of humanities, you might say, or a postgraduate of humanities. I just piqued my curiosity, talking to you, talking to so many people, I started learning. And fortunately, I got to apply it in some place where I was posted, even if not directly, indirectly. It doesn't happen with everyone. So appreciating the importance of this ICT in terms of the gray zone conflict, even if it is affecting the area of sphere of the official who is manning the department or the ministry, it just simply doesn't gel. The guy is not looking at this. He is looking at how many mandates he has generated in NREGA. He is not looking at how ICT is going to affect his NREGA. Some areas where government has been able to apply ICT very effectively have been your Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, have been NREGA also, but there more geospatial technology has been used for command and control to have the knowledge about the coverage, to have the knowledge about the beneficiaries, but not in the areas which are crucial to the national security where you can deter the gray zone conflict. So I won't entirely blame my tribe for that, though I would blame them to some extent for not being alive to the situation or not trying to do what is expected of them to do, because anyway, one of us gets posted as Secretary DOT. one of us gets posted as Secretary MEIT. If he has not tried to learn and gets posted as the secretary of either of these two ministries, and then you are bound to face a very, very sad situation. And that is precisely what has happened. Below them, they have got only technical people. Now, these technical people, I'm not singling them out, but I'm generally saying that lots of them aspire for their kids to become better than them, how to secure an admission in Harvard, how to secure an admission in MIT, that too with full scholarship. Well, there are people who come, promise them to get it done, they assure it. Microsoft can afford to provide a scholarship. Google can afford to provide a scholarship. They can afford to buy a seat for them in the Ivy League universities. Now, this is what is the most insidious component, which is really gnawing at our system. We don't realize it. It's like a rat, literally, day in and day gnawing at the root of a plant and ultimately making it so weak that it collapses. This is precisely what has been going on. Fortunately, the government, I would say the government in its present avatar, and thanks to the efforts like Sitara, to which I don't contribute directly, but indirectly only, people are getting aware, government is becoming aware, they have started acting. To what extent Sitara is succeeding or Sitara is failing, we cannot comment. That only time will tell. But I can assure you, even in my tribe, when I am talking to the officers today, who are there at the helm of affairs, they are realizing now the importance of ensuring that the ICT is in our hands so that we can ensure national security.
Thank you, sir. A nation of 1 billion plus sold for a few scholarships. Amazing. Are we so dumb? Okay, let me go back to at least IAS got the excuse that they are not specialists, they're generalists, and they shift from ministry to ministry. So I come back to General Hooda. So how did our entire military leadership not see this, except for you? So I can't blame you. But what about the rest of the military leadership, sir? How didn't they understand the centrality of ICT, not only for national security, but also for national economics? Why didn't they even have a leadership vision about where the military should be pushing the nation so that, the economics of the nation is, taken to its, finally, it's all economics. If you have poor people, how can you defend your nation? I ask you for your views.
So Pavithran, this is my sort of personal opinion. So I am not going to sort of paint every military leader as the same. I think what has happened is some of us, and I include myself till I got a little educated, we've tended to keep our strategic leaders and technology a little apart. I know some of us took pride in saying, listen, I don't understand technology, I only understand strategy. My job is leading soldiers, creating strategy. Technology is somebody else's job. And therefore, my own experience, and I'm completely quoting from my experience, somebody's experience could be different, honestly, was that, and again, I come back to when we're trying to implement the boss, I mean, who are we deferring to? Who was countering sort of my arguments was not the strategic leadership of the military. It was the technical guys who were saying, we don't think this is good. So we were also deferring a lot to our technology people, our communications people, and listening to them as to whether we should adopt it or not. And as I said, adopting it or not adopting it is not a technology issue. It's a national security issue. Unfortunately, we were deferring to them. I remember, the same argument that you brought out. Somebody telling me, sir, when I was saying implement BOSS, he said, no, but Microsoft is a trusted supplier. And I said, whatever that means. I said, BOSS is not trusted, and our own indigenous stuff developed by a government organization. BOSS was not developed by also a private vendor, it was developed by a government organization. A government organization is developing that for you, and you're saying this is not trusted because they, then again, they come out with this whole thing, no, this doesn't have some level 4 certification and something. So I think that the problem was, and I firmly believe that, as we look at senior leadership in the military, we now need people who understand, the marriage between technology and national security much better than they have understood it in the past. So as I said, Pavithran, this is just my understanding. I think at some stage, the military leadership has said, technology, we will defer to the technical guys, even where it impacts national security, because we possibly don't have enough understanding of it, which is something that I think we need to now start correcting. I mean, senior leadership is not merely about, so at some stage you have to graduate from leading the people to leading institutions. And it's at institutional level that you need to understand, how various aspects impact your own strategy and your own national security. So leading people is fine at some level, but institutional leadership is something that we need to develop. Pavithran.
Thank you, sir.
As I said, this is my just personal sort of opinion. I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush. No, that
Certainly,
wouldn't
sir.
be.
I too belong to the same tribe, but I do accept it. It's an academic exercise to find solutions to, and the first step is to accept that there is a mistake and there is some structural infirmities. Unless you accept there is something wrong, how do you find a solution? So how did we get to an insular military leadership who stays away from policy and the big picture is something for another day, another time. But let me come back to what is the role of social media for gray zone warfare? I'll ask General Hooda to give his views on this, social media and gray zone warfare.
So, as Ambassador Smita said, ICT has been weaponized. I mean, this is a term everybody is using, that social media has been weaponized. See, there are fissures in every society. There are divisions in every society. You take, the most liberal countries in the world, like the US and the European countries, or you take a country like India, which is very, very multicultural. There are always some divisions that are there in society. What social media is doing, and I know it was not created for that purpose, what it is doing is it's taking these fissures and really making them into something like chasms. And it's to do with how it is being used. There is a degree of anonymity. Fake news travels faster than facts. Anger is an emotion that is most easily expressed on social media. I mean, these are all studies, that have been carried out. And the way social media is structured. So we know in Facebook, for example, if we like a post, then Facebook is going to feed us more of that same information or similar type of information. So what it is doing is creating echo chambers. So we are only hearing one side of the story, a story that we like, a story that fits our ideology. Alternate viewpoints are not being heard at all. And therefore, I said it's creating much more divides in society. The second issue, and which I raised earlier, Pavithran, is that even our leadership at all levels wants social media, wants, I have so many million followers, I have got so many likes on the Twitter, which I did, I have so many retweets. So they want this, they're satisfied if what they're doing on social media is being approved by large sections of the people. And therefore, it is influencing our political leadership in ways which, without social media, perhaps they wouldn't have. They would have given a much larger and deeper thought to what are our strategic options, what should we do. Instead of that, it's like we need to react immediately. Just see Greta Thunberg's, she puts a tweet on farmer protest, and who reacts? The Ministry of External Affairs. I was amazed. This is what I'm saying, that you are forcing governments to react immediately in ways that really were not important. And so I think social media is something that unless, and I don't know whether there are ways to regulate it, although social media giants themselves are saying that yes, regulation is required, some amount of regulation. But there are enormous dangers to social media. I honestly don't know whether there is an answer, because the way people have taken to it and the way people sort of express their opinions from it, the way leadership is getting influenced by social media, what we need to do, how we need to look at it, requires some very, very deep thought. I think not only at levels of government, but also at individual and personal levels of how and what we are doing. Pavithran.
Thank you, sir. Color revolutions, social media, all that is vast topics by itself. We have covered it partially in the previous questions. Because I would like to devote some time for the audience towards the end. So, General Hooda has very well covered it, but that's a topic which has got huge dimensions by itself. The need to ape, the innate nature of human beings. Okay, keeping up with the genesis. These are all weaponized. But let me now come to a more specific topic when I think Sitara has played a sterling role. What are the dangers posed by the technical domination of foreign companies in India's ICT infrastructure? Ma'am, Ms. Smita Purushottam, can I have your views on this? What are the dangers?
I've already spoken about this, that 80% of our networks are in Chinese hands. That in itself is a huge danger. All your information flows, the capacity to influence mindsets, etc. The sheer espionage value of that is already a huge security threat. But as I said, Sitara's one great achievement is that, at least we've sensitized the government as to the Chinese threat. As far as the threat from other countries is concerned, because of what Smita Francis has called the political economy of our country, it is dominated by these multinationals and their scholarship programs, etc. And for what was that? For the lack of a nail, a kingdom was lost. It's literally that. So we are fighting on all these fronts, and I think there is absolutely no. I can't even really begin to answer that question. It's so obvious, that a country like India, or it should have firstly its own indigenous capabilities. You have a huge amount of penetration, espionage, and hacking that's going on. We've actually compiled a list of all the cyber hacking that the Chinese have done. But mind you, that's only 35% of all the hacking that's done in India, to India. So there is a huge danger, and we have to substitute now very aggressively. But it is really shocking that despite our letters, despite, we have even heard that diktat has gone down to these offending ministries that, you should now indigenize rapidly. Even then, they continue to flout the Atmanirbharta. What is going on in our country, I cannot understand, but it definitely explains one thing to me, why we were colonized for 200 years. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So the ICT infrastructure of the critical information area is being defined as the nervous system of a nation. That in foreign hands, that should give nightmares to people, but seemingly it does not. So let me go to Mr. Shambhu Singh to understand why doesn't it? It's a simple message. It's no rocket science. I'm sure even a humanities guy is able to understand. So the smart policy makers, our civil servants should be able to grasp this simple thing. Why are they not able to grasp it, sir? Your views on this?
Well, Pavi, as I said earlier, it's not that people are not understanding today. they are. But the system has been compromised over a period of time in such a manner that it has become extremely difficult to root out the vested interests all too sudden. It is so deeply ingrained in our society, which is reflecting in our bureaucracy, which is reflecting in our governance. And it's very difficult to get rid of it overnight. I would say we have any number of companies, any number of research groups working in this country and coming out with products which are being sold across the globe, but unfortunately not in our country. And therein our existing system is to be blamed. One is you insist on getting certification or getting a partnership with one of the PSUs, public sector undertakings. What is the competence of that public sector undertaking? We are not taking into consideration. What that PSU is doing, if there is a technology with DRDO, which might be hijacked itself, and this I will explain, it takes the technology, comes out with a product, puts it before you, but takes all the hardware from abroad, maybe even from a Chinese company. All the high vision cameras were Chinese companies, Chinese company being offered to the nation on a government contract by our PSU. And the high vision is known for broadcasting our recordings to China. That's the state we are in. DRDO funds a small group of researchers. It says we'll pay you 10 crores, but you cannot use that technology. You cannot sell that technology because we want to put our thappa on that technology, that it has been developed by DRDO. Now, what kind of system we are living in? If that is the system we are living in, I'm afraid we are not going to come out of it ever. And we are not going to reap the benefits of the brilliant minds of this country ever. We will continue to see brain drain because they will keep going out. Some guy will go to Singapore to set up his office. Some guy will go to the USA. Some guy will go to England or elsewhere, wherever it suits him. Today you have technology wherein with sound waves, you can ensure that there are no birds around the airport and the runway. Today, literally, you have guys standing with the guns to shoot the birds. But you would not take that technology from an Indian technology developer. He goes out and sells it to Singapore. He sells it to Kuala Lumpur. He sells it to Heathrow. He cannot sell it to Delhi. He cannot sell it to Mumbai. He cannot sell it to Bangalore. Similar things are happening in the fields of technology. I'm telling you, one laboratory of India comprising of 15 people could create the entire naval operation control system and implement it in Malaysia. Subsequently in Indonesia. It could not do so in India. We are looking at the ecosystem of this country wherein your own people are outsiders and where outsiders are insiders. We can create hardware. We create hardware for Cisco. Somebody from Cisco was here. I saw the name. We create hardware for the Cisco. But it is transported all the way to USA to be stamped Cisco and to be introduced with the backdoors. Why can't the same company be used by us to create routers for us with an Indian brand and with an Indian technology? Somehow there, I don't know whether it's got into our genes, that anything white and foreign looks extremely attractive to us, but anything brown and domestic is abominable, is abhorrent. That's the kind of psychology we are living with. I'm sorry to say this, but that I feel is the reality and the fact of today. Over to you, Pavi.
Thank you, sir. That was some very strong words and plain speaking. So how did we internalize such a system where we govern ourselves, we tax ourselves, we've got our own constitution, and we present our wealth to others, beggaring ourselves? That does seem to be like a successful gray zone, operation, and we definitely seem to be at the receiving end. So let me jump into the next one, because we have covered about the domination of foreign companies in ICT infrastructure. What is the importance? I come back to you, Mr. Shambhu. Why? And it is to you, because I remember very well, this was in 2014 when you made me write a paper on the importance of personal data and privacy at the strategic level. Now, what made you make me write that paper is still beyond me. But what is the importance of personal data, and why is a strong privacy law required? Back to you, Mr. Shambhu.
Well, Pavi, let us first talk about privacy. What it is and what does it mean in today's world? I would say privacy in today's world, particularly with all this information and communication technology, doesn't mean much. Rather, doesn't mean anything for that matter. It's basically an us versus them battle. It's about drawing boundary lines. I draw the boundary lines. What should be private to me and should not be available to anybody else. Unfortunately, today, we are not able to decide that they who are collecting our data, when we go online, when we use an app, and whenever we are sitting on our computer, what, how much, and when, and where my data should be collected. Over that, we have absolutely no control. It is they who decide. In many cases, we give our assent. We say, okay, I agree to the conditions. We give permission to access on our mobile also, access to our camera, access to our contacts. We got to because we have no choice. But then out of that, I have no control over what data is being taken out and by whom and where it is being kept and how it is being used. You and I are talking, you and I have a conversation, sitting in, suppose, for example, when you come to Delhi in a room in USI, and next moment, an ad pops up in front of you and me, connected to whatever we were talking. What is going on? See, in 2014, when I requested you to write that paper on privacy, I won't get into the details, but what I saw with my own eyes, what was happening while, of course, we were performing our national security duties, But the data which we could see, the data which could have had access to, was phenomenal. And that was the point where I was convinced that we have to define thus far and no further. And that was the time when I requested you to write that paper on privacy.
Well, thank you,
Privacy law.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Please continue.
Yeah. You were saying something.
No, sir. I thought you had ended, but let me have your views on privacy law before I go to General Hooda.
You see, a very, very strict privacy law. For example, a general privacy law resulting into rules, general rules, does prescribe that this is to be done like this and not any other way. What is the guarantee that it is being followed in its entirety? It can be guaranteed, it can be ensured only when you have an incremental approach leading to that privacy law, where you slowly start tightening the screws, like what UK did. UK came out with rules, something called age-appropriate design code. Now, this age-appropriate design code was an accidental code. When the government of UK wanted the general privacy rules approved, it was a compromise with the groups and NGOs looking after the children's welfare. However, this code, which ensures what children can access and how much of children data can be collected and kept where, once this started getting implemented, half the battle was won. I'm telling you, half the battle was won because you are restricting the flow of data beyond a point. How are you doing it? You are making sure that the data remains where it is supposed to remain. It is not supposed to go to the US of A or a server in Philippines or a server in somewhere in Helsinki. You are making sure that it remains on a server in UK. And UK may be in a position to ensure that the server also complies to what its requirements are. So that brings us to how to ensure privacy. The privacy will be ensured even by these big tech companies if you have the hardware under your control. You make sure that the hardware is according to your requirements and it is kept within the geographical limits of your country where your laws apply. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. That was quite, in some measures comprehensive. But let me go over to General Hooda to understand his viewpoint. So, does personal data and the privacy law have a military implication on future battles, on the future battlefield? Let me have your overview on this, sir.
Of course, it does, Pavithran. As Mr. Shambhu has pointed out, you have a Chinese camera overlooking all your military installations. You have CCTV cameras outside South Block, outside every naval base, outside every air base, who is moving in and out. That kind of data is being collected by these cameras. So there is no doubt that personal data has a huge implication. I also pointed out that personal data is being used for targeting specific people. So it's not only a military implication, but it's a national security implication. Now, Pavithran, we can blame the application, the apps that we have on our phone for collecting data. I think the more fundamental issue are two. One, the Supreme Court has declared that privacy is a fundamental right. And the second is the government is to bring in the law. Why are we blaming applications for collecting our data? Because we don't have a personal data privacy law. They will continue to collect. They will continue to exploit it. You have data brokers who are going to continue to sell your data. So I think the government needs to bring in this data privacy law and make sure it's a strong data privacy law. This whole debate that if there is a strong data privacy law, it is going to hamper the intelligence agencies. I think this is a binary that's not really right. If you bring in a weak law, then there are going to be loopholes which are going to be exploited by other countries. See, we talk about what the Chinese are doing. So the Chinese have this National Intelligence Law of 2017, where they said all our companies based in China are supposed to cooperate with the government. The US has a similar law. It's called the Cloud Act of 2018, and you can go and look at it. And it says very clearly that US companies will provide data to the US government irrespective of where that data is located, even if it is located in another country. So I think it's up to us to have a strong privacy law. I think, the government sometimes dither over this, thinking that they will lose, some sort of control that they have over people's data. My own sense is, this is political. This is not national security. So we need a strong data privacy law. You and I have sat, in various forums, looking at these laws and putting out reports, collating these things. So to me personally, I think there is no option, and keeping intelligence agencies out of the purview of privacy data law, in my personal opinion, is counterproductive. Pavithran.
Thank you, sir. For want of a nail, the kingdom is lost. But if personal data and privacy has impact on the military field, why hasn't our militaries given their suggestions to the government? Why haven't our think tanks, military think tanks, let me put it that way, sir, I have not seen any paper where they have contributed. In fact, I remember asking a couple of think tanks who very politely declined to be part of debates on the privacy issue. So this is something which people might like to think over, and maybe Indus forums like Indus might like to, have a separate, seminar on why the military is diffident in India on national security.
Pavithran, so I will just suggest I wrote a paper for Delhi Policy Group on Pegasus and privacy and national security. I mean, people could read it if they want to.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now let me. I come to the last of my questions before I jump into the audience out there. Can I have a quick 1 minute each from each of the panelists? What is the way forward in the ICT sector? How can it strengthen our ability to fight the gray zone warfare? We will have Ms. Smita Purushottam's views first. She's been at the forefront of it. Over to you, ma'am.
So Pavithran, ma'am, 1 second. So Pavithran, I give my 1 minute to Ambassador Smita, because I think she knows more about it than I do. So I am not commenting, and you have my 1 minute.
2 minutes to you, ma'am, then.
No, I would totally defer to General Hooda, because I think his input is extremely valuable and we really look up to him. So please don't do that. Besides, I've already had my say, and we are going to continue working and going to continue badgering the government on this issue. And then there is a new minister. I've been told that he's he's positively disposed towards indigenization, but the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. So we'll continue to monitor the new setup, the new secretary. We're hopefully talking to him tomorrow, and see if there's been a real change in attitude. And I don't want to have them just listen to us. They have to give us a positive response. So it's high time now. India is now very vulnerable because of all the issues that the distinguished panelists have enumerated. And unless we indigenize, we're going to fall behind very badly. In my God knows 10 years, 60, 64, I'm nearly 64, I'm not seeing much change in the condition of the poor people in India. And this is because all the wealth of India is draining abroad through these tenders. And there's still, we have two races in India. One is the underprivileged, which is malnourished and not able to achieve their full potential. The gig economy is taken over. Nobody's getting high value jobs. All we're doing is incrementalism. Even the PLI scheme is devoted to that philosophy. So there has to be a mindset change, and hopefully, we have some people who are willing to follow the correct path and the correct vision to make our country strong, prosperous, and prosperous. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, Mr. Shambhu Singh.
Well, Pavi, my reaction is in only one line and three words. Indigenize hardware, indigenize software, indigenize the cloud, the storage. Both in ICT as well as wherever else we can. We have no other way out, period.
Indigenize in the critical information infrastructure. I totally agree with you, sir. Over to Sir General Hooda. Sir, let me ask. Let me just point you in a direction, sir. Post Snowden, it was very apparent that the foreign multinationals were in collusion with their own parent organization. So when people said that Microsoft is trusted, but boss cannot be trusted, and we, after that, have spent almost a humongous amount of 30,000 crores in creating our network for spectrum using Cisco routers. Okay. Why do you think the military has accepted this? Why has no one objected to it? Why didn't we put a stop to it in between? Those are things which always have troubled me. Maybe, sir, you might be able to, because that's very central to how do we take this forward. Because if the military who is in charge of the, who are all patriots, who are ready to put their life out there, who are the first who are going to get affected in case war breaks out, are not bothered, how do we convince the rest of the nation? So your views on this, sir?
So Pavithran, as I said, we should have taken a lead in this. Unfortunately, for whatever reasons, I mean, I don't think the seminar is really the place to go into what went wrong. I think what we should be looking at is what is the way forward, and I think both ambassadors Smita and Mr. Shambhu has pointed it out. Indigenize. We talk about the thing that power and that we have this capability. Honestly, Bobby, what is we are in the midst of what the fourth industrial revolution. What is our mean years of education in India today? It's less than 7 years of education when you look at the average people. How are we going to take advantage of this? Unless the government steps in a huge way for investing into technology which is indigenous, I'm afraid these few Microsoft engineers or others working in India, I don't think we should take that as a population that is going to lead the country out of the kind of inequality, etc., etc. We need to do much more, and the government needs to step in with huge support. Pavithran.
Thank you, sir. So we are now at about 22 minutes to end this webinar. So 5 minutes has been promised to Colonel Vijay. So let me now take on the questions by the audience. I will be expecting the panelists to give answers to this. Okay, let me go through it.
Pavithran, I have a point.
Okay, sir.
Can we call Colonel KPM Das, who is also in this he's attending, to have his views on that? He's also, him.
Yes, Colonel KPM Das, you put your company also there, sir. I do not know whether you remember me, but I remember you specifically, sir. We had met in Bangalore a long time ago. Over to you, sir. Maybe we can allow him to put on this. What are your views, sir? Quick interjection. What is the way forward, sir?
No, thank you. So firstly, very illuminating both from...
Yeah, Colonel Das?
Yeah, can you
We
hear
can't
me?
hear you. I think maybe someone will have to give him the ability to talk.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Interesting session.
Okay, he is not there. So in the interim, till the time he comes on board, let me ask the first question from the audience. Okay,
We
can hear him.
Pavi, we can hear
Some
him.
think tanks are funded
Pavi, we
by
can hear him.
Indian-owned software companies.
Pavithran, we can hear him.
We can hear him. We can all hear him.
We can hear you.
I cannot hear him. Maybe Cisco has decided to keep me out of it.
Maybe.
I cannot hear him.
No, we can hear.
Okay, very strange that I can hear all of you, but I can't hear him.
Colonel Das, put on your video, please, sir. I think that's the problem.
Information warfare has to do with individuals, anyway, I still cannot hear him.
Yes, sir. KPM, sir.
Okay, I'll go ahead nevertheless. A great session.
I can hear you, sir, now.
Okay, a great session. But I think, I listen to a lot of people. There is a bit of detachment from reality in a number of things, right? And that we will leave it for another day. Because unless you know where you are, you can never figure out where you want to go. And that is a kind of worrying thing, because I've split most of my experience is split between the government and past 18 years in the industry. And one of the things that General Hooda made is a very good point, which is across countries, and I work with multiple countries. I know what France is going through, Germany is going through. They are in fact more conservative than India, right? But they're able to get their act together. My view is, one, there is a cultural issue here. One, it is not enough to write strategy papers, policy papers, all of that. The rubber hits the road when you start executing. And I see a major gap there. I earlier, in one of my earlier roles, I worked with government as a customer, and I've seen there's a huge gap there. And that is something we need to do, and which is basically impacting business in India. The second is, there is a lot of investment that government needs to make. And I think, irrespective of what people said about PLI, I think it's a good start. And if there is an understanding that at least for cybersecurity, government is central to everything, unlike other aspects of ICT. And this has to be led by the government with a whole of nation approach. My own experience, 18 years, is that there is an arm's length relationship between the government and the private sector. There is a need to trust each other and bring them in, and you will see results. We probably are sitting on a mountain of gold in terms of cyber capability and capacity. It just needs to be harnessed, and there's a lot of discussion. I can see a number of other people with whom I formerly worked in my earlier avatar, but there's a lot of work that we can do together. It's not all negative. That there are a lot of things that we can do together with the industry, but then that requires some degree of trust, which I don't see in as much measure as should be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I could hear that part. So the first point, culture. So I just want to make this brief intervention. Culture is a fallout of policy. This is something people do not grasp very easily. Indian culture is a fallout of policy. Take a look at South Korea and North Korea. One people, two cultures. Think of China before Deng. The same country, two cultures. Okay. Immediate second policy was changed. Immediate change in this. Even Japan, when they started off their journey, they were known for shoddy technology. Today, no one says that about them. We are held back because our culture is dictated by our policy, right from the license Raj to today's tight control, has ensured that people like Colonel Das has moved out and working in Cisco. He did not think of starting his own company. So I sum it up there, sir. Let me now jump back into the rest of the questions. First one is Mr. Rishi Atreya. Some think tanks are funded by Indian-owned software companies. There are other Indian corporate funders too. There does not seem to be any direct funding from foreign software companies. Please comment. Thanks. So can we have Mr. Shambhu, who is from the MHA, who will be able to give a little bit of overview on this?
Can I have the question again?
So, okay. So some think tanks are funded by Indian software companies. There are other Indian corporate funders too. There does not seem to be any direct funding from foreign software companies. Please comment. Thanks.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely in the know of it. But one thing for sure I know, that wherever foreign software companies are missing, foreign think tanks being funded by the so-called not-for-profits, they are there batting for them, funding think tanks in India. From the Home Ministry, I have seen who funds whom. I will not go beyond that. There are ways and means of funding, and it is going on to influence Indian policy.
So let me sum it up, sir, as a person who knows a little bit about this. Who are the Indian corporate funders? Where do they get their money from? So are they surrogates? I will leave it at that. Thank you. Now comes, what is the role of Telecom Regulatory Authority of, again, Rishi Atreya, of India in information security? What is the role? Would anyone of the panelists like to take this on?
No, they have no role. They have no role at all.
They all
They only
create.
regulate the telecom, what is happening, what should be the rates of SMS, how many SMS can be allowed in one go to watch somebody, those nitty-gritties of operations. They have no role to play in terms of security. They have no role to play in terms of procurement. They have no role to play in terms of deployment.
So that's just a taxpayer sink, is what I understand. That's okay. Now, Mr. Everything is dominated by. Okay, there is to. Okay, Brigadier Sandeep has said he's made a statement. There's a need to bring in the aspect of what Mr. Shambhu said during the training itself, during the sojourn in Missouri, to understand ICT and other latest technologies, which is changing every day, will affect their work and national security. So do you? I will translate this. Do you think that people who come to tenure, policy appointments need to be given a refresher, fast-forward course by think tanks like the, Indus International or any other think tank, so that they understand what is ICT? It won't take more than 4 or 5 days to make people understand what is ICT.
Oh, sure.
So
even a capsule, just a capsule of whatever we have discussed today, if that can be encapsulated in, say, 2 or 3 lectures or 4 lectures, that will be enough.
A lot of questions from Rishi. So let me give another gentleman from Ms. Sanal. I think it's Brigadier Sanal, whom I knew when I was in service. Managing social media has been done by China, even not agreeing to their stronger methods. They started with making it impossible for anyone to be anonymous. This can be a starting point. Oh, how can you make anyone transparent in social media? Huge, that's a debate by itself on privacy. So anyway, that maybe General Hooda, sir, we did cover this a little aspect. Can you just give your views on this?
Yeah, so I think we need to be. Okay.
I'm sorry, General Hooda. In a lighter vein, Sanal himself is a person who can create huge matters of debate. He reads Chinese newspapers from all directions, diagonally, horizontally, vertically, and up to down, down to up. He's something in himself. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so Bobby, I think we need to be careful about this. I mean, as I said, we need regulation, and I think even the social media companies are saying that they need regulation because many of their platforms have been misused. So you are seeing regulatory practices in India. You're seeing it all around all around the world. So there needs to be some regulation. How much regulation? What should you do with anonymity of people, and that then impacts on my personal privacy. And you have seen then to what extent you can go. So then you have Pegasus being used against journalists. I'm not saying the Indian government has used it, but you have these kind of tools being used against journalists, political dissidents, political leaders. So we need to come to a right balance. I'm not sure we want to go the Chinese model way. As the Chinese people have been brought up in a particular way. I mean, their whole society has been brought up in. If you try and implement those kind of steps in India, I'm not sure they will work at all. So I don't. I know I'm not giving you a great answer, but I think we need to balance this whole issue of privacy versus security.
Okay, huge debate by itself. So unless you sit in a proper workshop and go into details, it might not be answer which has got simple answers. Anyway, let me another from okay, Indus International Research to everyone. Okay, fine. It's I think that been. His question is theoretical, yet direct and simple to Mr. Shambhu Singh. How a line can be drawn between a legitimate democratic right to protest and subversive action of the enemy? Who can arbitrate to decide which public protest is genuine and which one is part of the gray zone warfare? How, between a government in power and its opposition clamoring to get back to power, a neutral person can know who is the one manipulating the media and public perception? Isn't it a very gray area to be definitive? Australia passed an act to track, prohibit, and monitor foreign political and academic funding. Isn't designates any designates any democratic activity beyond that anti-national too dangerous for the functioning of a healthy democracy? Okay, he has a little bit of a philosophical point out here. Who is, it is an acknowledged fact that gray zone is more difficult for democratic nations. But I will give to Mr. Shambhu to give his views.
Avi, first of all, let us recall we were talking about the gray zone warfare or the gray zone conflict. This question, first part of this question, deals with that gray zone. And it is up to the agencies of that country, up to the people who matter for administration in that country to take a call when it is breaching that limit where right to protest is basically becoming or verging onto something which is anti-national. Majorly, it will be decided by the intelligence agencies only based on their input as to how and why this is happening. A call can be taken to decide what does it mean. It's extremely difficult. Now, let me give you an example of a conference which took place in Rutgers University 5-6 days back. This was, no, not 5-6 days back, it was yesterday. 26/11, 20th anniversary. 5 or 6 professors, 2 of them Jews, 3 of them Indians, and 1 of them an American. They came out and delivered speeches ranging from feminism to queerism, and in some way justifying 26/11. Whatever happened on 26/11 in 2001. Now that is something where you are looking at an extremely liberal kind of approach where the government doesn't interfere. It says it is their freedom of speech. freedom of expression, freedom of expressing their opinion. But how far you will allow that to happen? How far you will let it go? It will depend on the laws of the nation. It will depend on the call to be taken by the government there. Thus far, they didn't do anything. The university didn't do anything. People reacted. And people have reacted in a very, very serious manner. But that hardly matters. In India also, even the courts have taken a call if this fellow made this statement, why he should be jailed, why he should be kept in jail. He is granted bail. Though whatever his statement was entirely subversive, was 100% anti-national. Still he was granted bail. Now, who is going to take a call? What is the extent of freedom of expression? And what is, and where does the boundary of crossing the national interest getting into subversion starts? Tough call, but based on inputs, based on information, of course using ICT, depending quite a lot on ICT, a call can be taken where one has to decide that thus far and no further. Avi, what was the other part?
So I think, firstly, we are running short of time, but then his basic thing is, how do we, track, prohibit, and monitor foreign political and academic funding? Okay, because Australia has passed an act. We have a similar act.
That's already happening. We have an FCRA. We have a FCRA division working in the Home Ministry. And we keep getting a lot of information where the money is going, where the money is being used, which institution is doing what. There may be shortcomings here and there, but by and large, they are being monitored and action is also being taken.
So 2 quick points here, sir. Lobby Act and a FARA Act. FARA is a Foreign Agents Registration Act. These are 2 things which the US has. India does not have.
No, we need that. We need that.
Yeah, we need that because
FCRA alone
there is a former director of IB who told me that if we have a Lobby Act and a FARA Act, 95% of Delhi will be out of business.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Okay. So we definitely do need more legislation to defend ourselves. So there is General Dushyant who is saying he would like to share some ideas, and I promise, I would give 5 minutes. I've overstepped only 3 minutes back. So back to Colonel Vijay, and if Colonel Vijay gives, permission to General Dushyant. I've had a wonderful, I'll sum it up briefly in saying that I had a wonderful, way of interaction with all the panelists. And I think some very, very important things which usually are not discussed have come out. I hope that Indus summarizes the whole thing and gives it back to, and gives out a study on the way ahead. Back to Colonel Vijay.
Sir, before that, I think we should give some time to Dushyant. He is writing a book on gray zone warfare. So we will request General Dushyant to give his views.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I hope you all can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Sir, first of all, sir, it was an excellently conducted webinar. My compliments to the organization and also General Hooda, sir. I'm meeting him after a long time. He would have seen my changed appearance nowadays. But more importantly, I wish to share a few issues. First of all, gray zone warfare is not a new thing, sir. It's an old wine in a new bottle. It was earlier known as political warfare, and now it is being coined as gray zone warfare, with the elements having changed. In political warfare, George Kennan had actually started off this kind of idea of warfare between nations, doing regime changes and interfering into elections. Now it has broadened to ICT, as we all are discussing, and many other aspects. The second important issue is that gray zone warfare also includes positive steps. which more often than not we tend to overlook. So if somebody is entering into a partnership or giving an arms sale or giving an aid, that is also part of a gray zone warfare, sir, which is based on what all research I have done. And the third thing is the cyber attack. The changing paradigm of cyber attack was the Stuxnet. The DG certificates which were stolen actually, which were fail proof. I think in our country we need to indigenize, otherwise we'll also land up with a similar kind of a story as highlighted by Mr. Shambhu. And regarding the boss story, remained till I was there in Eastern Command, and I think after that it fell through. Just for information of General Hooda sir, I tried to continue it till I was there, but thereafter I came under some kind of a cloud, as you all know. But after that, it all fell down right from the army headquarters to everyone. The reason is culture, which Colonel Das so well articulated it, sir. The last point I have is, sir, the Security Operations Center. Now, this is something which is mandatory. Unfortunately, in our country, very few people are going in for it. We are losing data. Most of the multi-brand companies are losing data to the tune of 20 million, 30 million, 35 million personal data I'm talking about, sir. But none of them are still going. They're all buying back the data from the dark net, sir, which is not good for us in the long run, sir. Thank you, sir.
Pavithran.
Thank you, Pavithran.
Thanks, sir.
I don't want to get into any more. Just if I can have 2 or 3 minutes, is it okay? It's basically.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I hope I'm audible. And first of all, I would like to thank all the 3 speakers for having taken time for enlightening us. But I must confess that I came with a lot of expectations, in the sense I would go back to sleep with all, but I have more questions than what else. It's not to take away anything from the speakers, but they've only been able to sort of kindle that thing. I mean, it's so scary, it's so huge, it's so complex. I think we need to have many more of these, and I hope all the 3 speakers, sometime we would like to listen to them more often whenever they have time. I'll really appreciate that. One point from each one of them. As far as General Hooda is concerned, first he brought out a very important, which I thought I must mention. He says we are all talking about this, but there are, as of now, no protocols for countering this. I think that's very important. The second thing, as far as the ambassador is concerned, she made a very strong advocate of indigenization and all that. And I've seen that. I've visited her site. I'll request her sometime if she can spare a little, 1 hour to give the presentation. We'll get a lot of people. And the ma'am, whenever you're free, I'll be very happy if you can give a presentation. Though I've seen the thing, and what I liked about all 3 of them is very bold, very candid, and with no punches, held back. And finally, the same thing about Mr. Shambhu Singh. I'm really grateful. Again, I can understand some of your limitations of not being able to share with, some compulsions are there. We appreciate that. And one thing I want to share, my experience. Now I know what a gray zone. I've got some idea. I had gone to do a battle study in Vietnam, Battle of Dien Bien Phu, and I was there in Hanoi Airport. I was planning to having finished my study, I was taking a flight to Ho Chi Minh City, and then suddenly there was a bedlam, there was a bell, and everything shut down there in Hanoi Airport. And we were told for the next about 2-3 hours there won't be any flight. But ultimately, after 6 hours, I had to cancel my flight and I had to stay back. Then I went and visited one of our military attaché who was there in Hanoi. I took a little time. I was talking to him, and you'll be surprised, the whole of Vietnam for about 6 hours, all traffic lights, all hotels, nothing was working. So I asked him what exactly happened. He says the Chinese had jammed the whole thing. So you can imagine the kind of, the entire nervous breakdown and the paralysis of the system. And I thought recently in Bombay, we had a small little incident like that. They said it just a trailer, the power grid, when it shut down for a short. So I don't know whether these things are real, but we would like to know more about this. There's no time, unfortunately, for, a little explanation on this thing. I'm very, very grateful to all the viewers and Colonel Pavithran especially for having brought these three brilliant speakers, and you really set the tone. We want to do a series of this. I'll request General Dushyant also sort of the chip in some time on gray zone. So we'll be allotting the next 1.5 months, once in 10 days, one subject, including cyber attack, your cyber security and artificial intelligence, and each one of them. With this, I hand over back to Pavithran. Once again, thank you very much, each one of you.
So thank you, sir. I've actually finished. So it's back to Brigadier Sandeep.
Okay, it is an invigorating session which we had. All that reminds me to thank all the panelists and the moderator who has made it possible for all of us to understand the nuances of ICT and its far-reaching efforts as on privacy of Indian population and the way it can be exploited to perpetuate gray zone warfare, a very cheaper method of subjugating a democracy like ours in the long run. And we all know the only one country who can stand against China with all the facilities is India. So they have explained the need to become Atmanirbhar in ICT for the good of the country. Thanks a million, General Hooda, sir. I trained under him, and Madam Smita Purushottam and Mr. Shambhu Singh for giving a great insight into the fast-changing technological developments in the field of ICT that we cannot ignore. And it has to be these people who are at the hem of affairs, as well as who are, the executives, as well as the legislators or the lawmakers, has to be made to understand what it, this cannot be ignored. The importance of ICT and gray zone warfare, how it manifests on the country, cannot be ignored. On behalf of Indus International Research Foundation and all the attendees on the webinar, I thank you, General Hooda, sir, Madam Smita Purushottam, and Mr. Shambhu Singh once again for sparing your valuable time to educate all of us. And finally, my deepest thanks to and appreciation to Colonel Pavithran, who was my neighboring company commander in Nagaland and Manipur, and for his outstanding way he has conducted the seminar in a very professional manner by raising current and future issues in the field of ICT. And I finally want to thank all the people who took time. It's a very long session to come here and listen to all these things, and people who contributed like Colonel KPM Das, who is staying in Mayona, in Sandeep Vihar, as well as General Dushyant, my regimental officer. Thanks to them also, and all the attendees for sparing time to attend the thing. Thank you all once again. Have a nice evening.
Okay. Ambassador Smita, Mr. Shambhu, Pavithran, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks,
very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all of you. Hope to be in regular touch. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yes,
Thank you so much, ma'am. See you.
Thank you so much.
Would like to see you again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, General Dushyant, sir. Please keep in touch and keep sending your articles.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.